Hey future voters, it's me, Uma, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're interviewing an Ivy League graduate who was born and raised here in Florida. He is the president of the Miami-Dade Young Democrats, vice chair of the Miami-Dade Democratic Party, and a leader in 2 local civil organizations. He's registered voters, supported organizations and campaigns, helped homeless families, and even opened his own home to residents in crisis. He's running for Florida State Senate District 113, including cities like Key Biscayne, Brickell, Little Havana, and parts of Coral Gables. So, I'd like to welcome Justin Mendoza-Routt to Before the Ballot. Hi!
Hi, good morning.
Thank you so much for appearing on Before the Ballot.
Of course, thank you for having me.
No problem. Let's just jump right in. One thing I always like to say is I need to know the person before I interview the politician, because one cannot exist without the other. So Why don't you tell me a little bit about your childhood? You say on your website that your childhood was marked with eviction, food insecurity, with 2 parents who were putting themselves through college. How did your upbringing influence who you are today?
I mean, in every sense of what you just said. So, like you mentioned, my parents they struggled coming here. My mom was a teenager when she came here from Colombia, and my dad also, very young, but unfortunately went to prison for nonviolent drug offenses. And when he came out, he reformed his life and did all the things that we'd like to see from returning citizens. If you know anyone or have any loved ones who've spent time incarcerated, trying to find a job afterwards can be a very difficult process. And so my family, we got evicted from our home, and my parents, they worked incredibly hard. They figured it out. And were able to get us, back on our feet. My parents got me into Ransom, where I got a scholarship to go there. My mom ended up buying a house that was less than 100K back in the late 90s. Nowadays, that just doesn't exist. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm running today, because back then my parents were able to figure it out. The cost of living was never easy, but it was such that if you worked hard, and they worked very hard, 2, sometimes 3 jobs, you could build a life for yourself. And nowadays you just can't. And it's unfortunate that we've gotten to this point now where, like you said, you having lived in Brickell before, like that's ground zero for the affordability crisis here. All the condos and everything. If you can find a 1-bedroom for less than $3,000, like that's a miracle. And for somebody who, my parents who were service employees and, had taken care of 3 kids, that's just not feasible nowadays. So,
wow. So that was the catalyst that got you into it, even from a young age? Did you know you
yeah,
wanted to
I mean, I wouldn't say I knew I wanted to be a politician, but I knew that at a young age, kind of 2 parts to this. First, there were a lot of kids I grew up with who were just as smart, just as hardworking, definitely better behaved than I was at that age, who, didn't end up in the same place that I did. And I think in large part, that's because they didn't get access to the same high quality education I did. And I'd like to think that I'm, was this great kid and super special. But the reality is, in large part, I just got lucky that I got this scholarship to go to Ransom. And otherwise, my district school would have been this failing public school, or a school at the time that had been failing for 10 years. And so in the back of my head, there's always this okay, when I get older, I want to make sure that I fight for people like me to get a high quality education, a high quality public education, so that they don't have to rely on getting a scholarship to a Ransom or any of the other great schools that we have down here. And then the more recent catalyst was just in my personal life. I've spent a lot of time in politics, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, having been president of Young Dems and whatnot. But also working in helping families that are struggling with homelessness and housing instability, just in my personal life, just seeing that the families that are dealing with the same crisis that I was back when I was a kid, there just is no path forward for them to build a better life. And you see this across the financial spectrum. It's not just the people at the very bottom of the financial spectrum. It's, other than the people whose families are worth 100 million plus here in South Florida, everybody's struggling, and it's just crazy to see that in this world now where you can be like a lot of my peers who they're doing well for themselves, they're making a good upper middle class income, and a lot of times 2-parent and 2-income household, and they have kids and they're like, I can't stay here in Miami anymore, and that's sad because it's the people that grew up here that built Miami. So
it's crazy expensive. Like you said just now, you're president of the Miami-Dade Young Democrats, so you've worked with Gen Z for a long while. You've heard our opinions on many, many issues. How has Gen Z as a whole impacted your campaign?
Yeah, well, at the very least, they are the backbone of the campaign. If you take a look at any of the pictures of our canvases, they're the ones who are out there putting in the work and out there sweating with me, especially right now in the summer heat. Like, I am very thankful and grateful for all my
Miserable.
young Dems. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, if, for anyone who ends up watching this, if I can convince you to come out and knock doors with us in this brutal heat, I definitely appreciate all the extra hands. But no, I mean, Gen Z, in all seriousness, I think we hear a lot of this narrative of I'm a millennial, so I know for you Gen Zers, I now get called the boomer within the young Dems, but I went through the same thing when I was in my early 20s, where people were like, "Oh, millennials, you guys are just lazy." And for us, it was they were making fun of us for being hipsters and for liking avocado toast. I think you guys still get made fun for avocado toast, but I think they added
Yeah.
matcha onto it now.
Yeah, the Starbucks. Starbucks.
But
We get made fun of a lot for
right,
that.
right, exactly. You're Starbeast and all of that, yeah. But I think it's one of those things where I see the same thing, Gen Z being lazy and disaffected and all that, and it's just not true because I see it every day. The Gen Z volunteers on my campaign who are out there, and if you've ever knocked doors, it is not easy work when it
That was
feels
brutal.
like 110 degrees out there.
Ay,
Yeah, when I hear people say Gen Z being lazy, I'm just like, all right, whatever.
yes.
To the specifics about policy and stuff, though, you hear the disaffected, and I think that's also a big part of my campaign of hearing, we as Democrats, and I'm very much a loyal Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I kind of think of it on the way that, like, if you really love something, you'll challenge it to be better, and I think where. Having been president of the Young Dems, you see a lot of Gen Z people say, like, okay, well, the party isn't really representative of my interests and my needs. And the party overall, like at the national, I was talking about all these things that don't seem to be important to me on a day-to-day basis. And so that's kind of what's been guiding my campaign is, fighting for things that are ultimately about building a future for Gen Z and millennials and everybody,
Everyone.
at all ages. But really, we're going to be the ones that are affected by all of these policies, whether it's the cost of living crisis and, Gen Zers being able to move out and rent an apartment that they're proud of and eventually buy a home, or the effects of climate change, or the effects of reproductive rights being taken away in Florida. Like, those are the roots of everything in my campaign.
All right, let's transition. Let's kind of like talk policy a little bit. You have a finance career.
Sure.
I don't, but I think we could both agree that living in Miami is crazy expensive. What are some steps that you'll take
hmm
that'll ease the burden on your constituents' wallets?
and sorry, you say hello
It's
from
okay.
my
It's
cat
okay.
Luna.
It's okay.
There's Luna. Say hi,
Hi.
baby.
It's okay.
I have two cats and a dog, so we may get some more cameos from them. But
Period. It'll
um,
get more views.
policies.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. I promise that wasn't staged. But so anyway, yeah, in terms of policies, so talking affordability, a couple things. First, anybody who is moving here to Miami or already lives here, we're seeing this. I hear it again, even through people up into my age in my 30s. People who are saying, "Hey, it's easier for me to just stay home with my family than it is to go out into the world." And the root of all of that is housing. I'm the only candidate in this race who's got a housing first policy, and not a developer friendly housing first policy, but one where we're actually saying, hey, we need real affordable housing. Right now, most of the government programs we have are essentially tax benefits to developers to charge market and above market rate rents for apartments and condos. And at the end of the day, whether it's Gen Z or someone of any age, like, there is no dignity in life if you don't have housing that you can afford and that you're proud to call home. Nobody wants to live in, with a slumlord, and nobody wants to be living in a nice place that they're like struggling to figure out how they're going to afford on a week to week basis. Like, I remember coming straight out of college, and it's crazy thinking back now, but my first apartment out of college, I was paying 1,600 a month in rent, and I was just like, this is crazy. I
Fresh
don't know
out
how
of
I'm gonna afford
college.
this, and but nowadays, if you're somebody in Miami, that, like, people kill to have a $1,600 a month apartment.
Yeah.
And so it's about making sure that we're building housing that is actually affordable, but at the same time that is conscious of our overall community, our environment. So instead of subdivisions that are being built out into the Everglades crossing what's called the urban development boundary. For anyone watching this is not familiar with it, this is kind of this invisible line that separates the residential areas from the Everglades.
Yeah.
And our county government and the state government are constantly trying to push that further and further out into the Everglades because it's cheaper to build out there. But it's also worse for our environment. And you end up getting these like cookie cutter homes in these non-walkable areas. And I think part of what makes Miami such a special place and such an attractive place for young people to come to live in or to stay if they already are living here, growing up here, is being able to go into communities like Brickell or Little Havana or Edgewater and just like walk around and like go see their friends without having to take a 30-minute Uber or whatever. So housing is at the core of my policy of making sure that we're building real affordable housing and not things like that are into a subdivision into the Everglades that isn't even like having a real community. The other stuff is also making sure that we're giving people good jobs that pay well. We need to raise our minimum wage to a living wage. Right now, $25 an hour, I think is the bare minimum to have any semblance of a good life. And I'd like to see more, but it's also about making sure people have benefits that they're proud of. So paid family and medical leave, vacation and sick days, insurance that is actually worthwhile to have and not, and as I'm sure you and many of your peers will find out as you get out of the college and in the working world, like it is stressful just figuring out what any of these things mean. Yeah, like you need like almost a separate degree to learn what all these things are. And it's just a process that we all kind of go through. And like government just needs to be easier. Like a government shouldn't be this thing that we're all like navigating and stress about. Like I want to build, I want us to have a government that people look to and are like, oh, great, that made my life a little bit better. That made my day
More
a little
accessible.
bit easier.
Yeah.
Exactly. And not something that's like, oh God, I got to navigate some terrible bureaucracy and that I'm going to just avoid dealing with because it's so stressful,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Continuing on the housing train, can you tell the viewers a little bit about the Live Local Act and your stance on it, how it would impact everyday Floridians? Just like, what is it in your words?
so Live Local was an act that was passed a few years ago that in theory, the promise the state government presented is, okay, we're going to take local community control away in terms of setting housing policies. So again, just keeping it high level, like if somebody wants to build a condo in a particular community, you have what are called the planning and zoning process and the permitting process. So essentially, you got to go to the government and say like, hey, I want to build this condo here. And then there's all these bureaucrats at the county level and the city level that say, okay, you need to meet these safety requirements. You need to meet these character of the community requirements. And you got to go in front of the city commission, all these zoning boards, planning boards, historic boards, if you're in a historic neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. That most of, your viewers have probably never heard of and hopefully never have to hear of. But they become really important steps in the process when somebody wants to build something that doesn't fit within the neighborhood. So say, for example, you're in a community that's all single family homes that are, 1 or 2 story homes that have nice yards and everything in a historic neighborhood like Coconut Grove or whatever.
Yeah.
And someone says, hey, I want to build a 30-story tower here. That's an area where the community will come and say, like, I don't want a condo right next to my home, or if somebody wants to build something right on the water that's going to be really damaging to the environment and to Biscayne Bay. So Live Local came in and said, hey, we're going to make it easier to skip all of these local processes where community gets their buy-in, where you can give community comments. Also, I'm having another cat join us here on screen. Okay. And so Live Local said, hey, we're going to skip all of these processes and make it like a fast tracked, process to get through that has less of this community buy-in. And we're also going to give tax benefits to these developers. And in exchange, you have to build housing under certain requirements that make it more affordable for the people to live there. But what we've gotten instead is you've seen our skyline grow enormously. You've seen more condos built along the water on Biscayne Bay that are not actually affordable, that aren't meeting the needs of the local community in terms of providing housing that they're supposed to provide can actually afford. And on top of that, you're seeing like just these cookie cutter condos that kind of just destroy the character of neighborhood and don't really provide like what I think everybody wants in terms of community there, all while cutting out local community input. So my stance on all of that is that's a bad trade-off. We haven't gotten more affordable housing. Rents have only gone up. And you're seeing it now too. A lot of these places stay empty for a long time because they don't want to go and cut the rents in these luxury condos because once you do, you're locking in people for there. So my stance on that is ideally, I'd like to see it repealed entirely. Right now, we have a Republican supermajority, so that may be hard to do. I'm going to fight for repealing it entirely. But if we can't at least reform it to say, hey, there needs to be more direct transparency with the local community. We need that local community buy-in where people can go speak in front of their city commission or their planning and zoning hearings or whatever, where you see people speak in front of the lectern. That has to be an essential part of the process, because that community pressure, that people don't realize how much it has an impact when a city commissioner has a bunch of their constituents yelling at them, like, and it can
Yeah.
seem crazy and like overwhelming and all of that, but it does have an impact. And
Yeah.
they'll say, okay, we're not going to vote to bypass this process here just to help a developer. And then two, none of these tax benefits and subsidies from the government, like our tax dollars, shouldn't be going to help a developer if they're not helping to make it cheaper for us to live there. And I
Yeah.
think those are two simple changes that we can make that are that we can get buy-in from Republicans on either way.
Definitely. You mentioned something about historic neighborhoods, historic places. One of my favorite places in all of Florida is Little Havana. Whenever we have family, whenever we have friends, we always bring them there to show them ball and chain at Domino Park. It is such a huge part of
Yep.
Floridian culture, honestly. And although Little Havana was declared a national treasure by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, there are no real official laws or legal protection against demolition, gentrification. So what are you going to do to protect this cultural hub?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I'd love to see it designated as a historic neighborhood. I think and to your point, the gentrification has become a major problem there, because you're seeing like the big part of what brings, whether it's tourists or people that live here to go check out Little Havana, are the people that live in Little Havana.
Yeah.
It's the people, when you, like you said, you go to Domino Park and people are playing dominoes there. It's not a bunch of tourists from the Midwest that are playing dominoes.
No.
It's the local Hispanic community here that I've done it. I mean, it's a lot of Cubans. I'm Colombian, but there's a mix of all, people backgrounds that are out there playing dominoes, and the music and the food, and it's all like it's all rooted in the actual community that lives there. And I think people
Mhm.
forget that. If you erase that community, then you erase what makes Little Havana Little Havana. And so that gentrification needs to slow down, because it's pushing those people out. And if you push all those people out, you're going to see the same thing that happened at Wynwood, which is Wynwood was supposed to be, it was originally this arts district where you had people who were real artists with their studios, who were building stuff, who were creating things in the neighborhood. And that's what made it attractive. But then you saw the gentrification and overdevelopment that pushed out that local community. And now it's just another business district where, there's some businesses that stay there open for a long time, but you even saw like the lifebloods of the community, like Gramps closed down. I was so sad when Gramps closed down in Wynwood, but you just see this churn of new businesses every like 1 to 3 years. They open up, they're super popular, influencers go there, then they kind of die down, and then they close and something new comes, and you've lost that character. And I don't want to see that happen in Little Havana. So anything we can do to protect that, and I think it starts with designating a historic neighborhood, is going to be top of mind for me when I get to State House.
Definitely, definitely. One thing you keep bringing back to gentrification is being priced out. So natives like yourself, who have been here for decades and years, are just being priced out of their areas because they cannot afford to live in Miami. How do you plan to protect Florida's true Floridians?
Yeah. So it goes back to everything we'll be talking about here, starting again with housing first. So at the end of the day, like, people need to be able to afford their home. So we have to build real affordable housing, not the live local scam of having these overdeveloped cookie cutter luxury condos that nobody can afford. It also means having good jobs. And good jobs that pay good wages. In my campaign, we're focused on making sure that every person in Florida has a living wage, that they can afford to take care of themselves and their family, and that they also have the benefits that they need, so that when they get sick, when they need to take a break to take care of a family member or loved one, that it doesn't lead to bankruptcy for them. Another big part of that is expanding Medicaid. I'm the only candidate in this race who's talking about Medicaid expansion, and Medicaid is, super important program for people who fall, like, if you're in that gap where you don't qualify for Obamacare subsidies for health insurance, but you don't make too little that you qualify for Medicaid, you just have no health insurance. And that actually makes everything more expensive for all of us. And so it's making sure that we're tackling all these levers here. We got to raise wages, we got to lower costs, and then of course we got to make sure that we're preserving the people that live here as is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of at the forefront of my policies.
Definitely. One other thing that I wanted to talk about with the big Hispanic population here in Florida, ICE is a large threat in your district. Florida makes up more than 10% of
Yep.
ICE arrests, and CNN recently reported that the government is planning to spend $20 million on new shock gloves for ICE agents. As the child of immigrant parents, what are your thoughts on ICE?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes as no surprise that we need to stop ICE. One of the things that really made, was sad for me to see, especially after everything, like Trump did not lie. This has not been a surprise what Trump and what DeSantis have been doing. It is really disappointing to see that in city of Miami that, last year that we passed what was called the 287G agreement. For any of your viewers watching or familiar with, that's an agreement that local municipalities sign with ICE to cooperate in terms of enforcement. And effectively, they say, hey, you pick somebody up or you come across somebody that you think is undocumented, you'll pick them up and hold them for ICE detention. And so then they automatically transfer them into ICE custody, and then ICE nowadays is rapidly deporting them. The lifeblood of Miami and its culture is our Hispanic community and our immigrant community, especially our Haitian community as well. And so for me, from my perspective, the very first step is ending all the ICE 287G enforcement agreements with our local law enforcement. Most people who are getting picked up by ICE have no criminal background, and their violation, their immigration violation, is the equivalent to a traffic ticket. I don't know about you, but I'd rather see police resources go towards catching actual murderers, violent criminals, things like that, not somebody who has had some sort of civil infraction, gotten the equivalent of a speeding ticket or a jaywalking ticket, and now we're redirecting resources away from public safety to pick these people up who have built their community, been an active serving member of their community for 20, 30, 40 years. So we need to see that end. On top of it, you mentioned things like these shock gloves. And in general, the brutality of ICE just speaks for itself. I mean, we just turn on any video that we've seen, whether it's, Alex Preddy, Renee Good, how they're treating the Haitian community here. And it's even more disappointing for me to see a lot of these congressmen, Democratic congressmen, who signed on to a bill thanking ICE for their service. That to me is crazy in a world where Trump has essentially very clearly not beat around the bush and said, essentially, this is going to be a private militia for me to take my racist policies and use that to stop immigrants and to hurt them and to get rid of them. That people are in any way acting like they're surprised that these abuses, the deaths, the sexual assaults in ICE custody, all of these things that are happening. And so as a state rep, I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that Florida Department of Law Enforcement and any state funds are not going towards ICE cooperation, because we just can't. We've seen for ourselves what the consequences of that are, and it's definitely not making any of us safer.
Yeah, I have so many friends of the Hispanic Haitian community. They, it's scary. It's really scary. But one thing that I also wanted to talk about for people of these communities, I have so many friends also with scholarships, and scholarships have done so much for them. Like, I've seen them get these opportunities that have just improved everything for them. So I know how influential a scholarship can be. So your scholarship to Ransom Everglades, you stated it changed everything for you. It got you into University of Pennsylvania, which led to a successful career in finance. So how would you improve public schools so that they can give these same opportunities for children who are just as deserving?
So I think the very first step is making sure that our public dollars are first and foremost going towards our public schools. Again, as you can tell, I'm not anti-private schools by any means. I mean, I had a great education at Ransom, but I would have much rather seen that rather than me getting lucky and getting that scholarship to Ransom, that I could have just gone to my local public school and gotten a high quality education. And so right now, like under DeSantis' policies, our voucher program, there's two main problems to it. First, it's coming at the cost of funding our public schools. So we're defunding our public schools, and it's not going to work. Like, I hear from so many friends of mine that are both teachers or they have kids at public schools here in Miami-Dade County, and they're telling me about how they're missing a full-time history teacher for an entire grade, or they're missing a full-time math teacher for an entire grade. That just doesn't work. Like, if parents think that the best option for their kids is to send their kids to a private charter, they should be able to have the right to do that. But it can't come at the cost of fully funding our public schools, fully paying our public school teachers, and making sure that our students in public schools have the resources that they need. Second part to that is, we, under our voucher program right now, we have money that's going to for-profit private schools. So generally speaking, if you want to set up a private school and make money doing that, that's a little bit weird to me, but like whatever, you can do that. But our tax dollars shouldn't be going towards funding a business venture that somebody has starting a school. So for me, those are two no-brainers for me. Ending our voucher program, pulling money out of public schools, and making sure it's not going towards people who are essentially running businesses to get rich off of. Oh, and then the third thing, of course, is any school that is getting public dollars from us has to be held to the same standards as our public schools. We definitely should not be taking money out of public schools to go into charter and private schools that are performing worse than our local public schools. At the end of the day, my goal is I want every student to have a high quality education, have the ability to get that however they need to get that. But us making sure that one student gets a good, high quality education, that should never come at the cost of making sure that another student gets a good, high quality education.
Yeah, it can't be luck of the draw. Right. Okay,
Exactly.
kind of also shifting here a little bit. When we first moved to Florida, everyone warned us not to settle down in Brickell because the surrounding areas, that's where we lived, everyone was like, oh, it'll just be completely underwater soon. How do you plan to deal with the large amount of floods in your district and improve the previous infrastructure for that?
One of the best things about being a state rep is our real power is bringing dollars back to the district. And so the most important things for me and at the forefront of my campaign is making sure that we make investments in the local infrastructure that we need to prepare us for both the current climate change that's happening and the even worse climate change that we're going to see in the future. Like you said, if you're in Brickell, Edgewater, whatever, you don't even need a rainstorm sometimes. You just have king tides and you'll get floods out in the streets there. And people's cars get ruined and all that. So most important thing that we need to do is improve that resilience infrastructure. So what does that look like? Expanding stormwater drainage so that when there is flooding, we have a system that can more easily, drain that stuff out. And then two, making sure that we have nature-based solutions. So things like living seawalls where we can put them, making sure that we have, honestly, enough tree canopy coverage because the first line of defense when there is flooding is for trees' roots to absorb that water. And the best way we can handle that is with native species that are absorbing that water because I don't think people realize, but if you look at, a concrete slab versus, a very healthy, lush, grassy area, and there's flooding in both, the grassy area is going to absorb that water a lot quicker. So it's a no-brainer. We need nature-based solutions, protect the greenery that we have right now, which means more park space, more living seawalls, things like that. And then we also have to protect Biscayne Bay. Another aspect of Biscayne Bay is not just about protecting it for the beauty and the sake of the environment, but a healthy coral bed with healthy seagrasses and having mangroves and things like that. They all have what are called wave attenuation. So when there is a big hurricane that comes through and you see storm surges that come up, when you have a healthy bay, that actually slows down some of the storm surges and prevents the water from flooding in the first place. So everything that I'm going to be working on when I get to Tallahassee is making sure that we're bringing dollars back to the district to improve and expand our infrastructure, our resilience infrastructure, all rooted in nature-based solutions.
Wow, I did not know all that about Biscayne Bay. That's crazy. That's insane. Climate change is such a huge issue in Florida. Our temperature is increasing on average by like 1 degree each year. It's crazy. And Florida has such a unique ecosystem. The Everglades, Biscayne Bay. What are some steps that you would take to inform your constituents about climate change, and how would you start, pollution prevention in your district?
I think another big thing that I talked about is just living a zero waste lifestyle. So I personally live as much of a zero waste lifestyle. And if people are not familiar with it, it's just trying not to create waste unnecessarily. So reducing single use plastics, making sure that you're composting with your organic waste, all those types of things that I think are super important. They can be fun. A lot of people just think of them as like annoying tasks. But, if you talk to any of the zero waste community, you talk to organizations like Debris Free Oceans or anything like that, I certainly have a blast talking with those people and building community with them. The key is making sure that people recognize that the beautiful bay that we have that is central to our economy and our way of life here in Miami, we got to do everything we can to protect it. So because it's in our self-interest to do that, not just, from the perspective of climate change, but like nobody wants to go in the bay if you're somebody who goes kayaking or snorkeling and see a bunch of trash floating around. And the reality is, whatever you think about it, like sea levels are rising. It's just a fact. Like we just look out of the water and see it every day.
Yeah. Another environmental thing that I think is such a hot topic right now is AI data centers. Florida's potential for data centers is being talked about endlessly. Your competitor, Gloria Romero Roses, has stated that she believes Florida is a place for data centers. What's your stance on this? How do you feel about that?
I think it's no surprise that I think that's crazy. I'm honestly shocked that she but if it say that, I think the community has been very, very loud and clear, both in Florida and across the nation, that people don't want data centers, like whether it's the noise pollution from them, the impact to our electrical grid, the cost to utilities, whatever the case may be. Like the benefits, or the detriments far outweigh any minute benefits that data centers provide. Put data centers somewhere else, not here in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people. But let's
Yeah.
transition, still talking about your competitor. The median age of your district is 39. Your competitor is also a native Floridian, and she was educated here. So what makes you more qualified than her for this position?
Yeah, one minor thing, correct. She wasn't born here in Florida. I believe she came here in her youth, but she's not actually from here, which is okay. I think it's like you said, the median age here in the district is mid to late 30s. That's me. I am in every way a product of this district. I was born and raised here. I've lived the life that people all throughout the district have lived, both as an immigrant family, having dealt with struggling financially a lot, and also finding a lot of success here in Miami. And so I think what people want here in Miami and in District 113 right now is somebody who both has experienced what they've experienced, knows what it takes to go through the hassles and struggles that people have here in the district, and also has the energy and youth to bring real solutions. I mean, from my perspective, look, I don't want to bash my opponent. I think she's a perfectly fine community leader, and I think she'll do fine in the state house. But I think if you're somebody who thinks all the politics of yesterday has been working for us and that the way that we've been doing politics for years is working, great. Go support her. But if you think we need new solutions, new energy, and new ideas to deal with the problems of today and the solutions that we need for the future, I'm the only candidate in this race for that. And I think, kind of like what you alluded to before, in terms of my opponent herself stated that she's fine with preempting local communities in terms of decision over housing policy and other policies that local communities make. She says that she thinks that there's a place for data centers here in Florida. I think all these ideas are just not in line with what the district actually wants and needs. I mean, look, the lady, she has a private jet, and all the power to her. I wouldn't personally ever have a private jet because it's not great for the environment, but I wish I had the ability to make that decision. But at the end of the day, like, that's not going to be somebody who's living and breathing the day-to-day issues, problems, and lives that we all have here. And I think District 113 and the people of Miami and Key Biscayne deserve a leader who's gone through what they've gone through and has, lived their life in their shoes. So,
Wow. Yeah.
I guess one other thing I'll say too is a lot of the problems we have here in Miami are also rooted in the overdevelopment here. And she's built her wealth working alongside the very same developers that are responsible for the crisis that we're in today here in Miami. So I'm coming in having done the grassroots work, both as with my community dealing with housing issues and also with Miami-Dade Young Democrats. I'm a product of this community, and I'm always going to fight for this community. And I think I'm the only person in this race that's always going to fight for their community.
Yeah. Again, Miami Young Democrats, Vice Chair of Democrat, Gen Z. You're locked in. But one thing you would also know about us is that my generation is so turned off of politics today because we're just growing up in an environment where fighting and yelling is the norm. That's what we see every day on the news. So how do you aim to guide the next generation into a space where we can clearly communicate with each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with both conversations like this that you and I are having, and also, everything that I'm doing every day in the campaign. I am constantly out there talking one-on-one to my constituents, knocking doors, making phone calls, and being accessible to everybody. And I think in large part, a lot of this vitriol and anger that we see in politics today comes from the fact that people just don't have a direct relationship with their local representatives, whether it's their state rep or their city commissioner or whomever it may be. And I think that's where we get lost, is that people on a day-to-day basis see, their representatives, the politicians, as somebody that is separate from them. There's somebody who's up in Tallahassee or up in DC and is not somebody they're ever going to meet or ever be able to connect with. And I'm trying to bring something very different to that, which is every single person I meet in my district at the door, I give them my personal number. I'm like, here, write it down, and not like a Google Voice number. I give them my actual, my number on my actual iPhone
Your
over
phone
here,
number.
And I think that's a rare thing, and people are always super excited about that. Now, that's just one small thing, but my point is that we need politicians who are accessible to the people that they represent. And I think the more people see that, at the end of the day, I want to be held accountable to my constituents. Like, the reality is, I'm not perfect. I'll be a first-time state representative. But the only way that I can truly represent my people is if my constituents can come to me and say, hey, I don't like that you did this, and are able to call me up and not have to go through sending an email that gets some automated reply that nobody ever actually reads, or some sort of message to a Google Voice number that nobody actually responds to. Like being accessible to them. And I think as we build those relationships, people will start to realize, okay, like politics doesn't have to be this blood sport, but instead be something like that. Which is what I think, the founding fathers and what we all want at the end of the day is like actual representatives, in the sense of people who are representing your interests, not just the interest of special interests or corporations or big donors or whatever the case may be.
Definitely, you gotta stay connected after the election. Totally. And last one to say is, if you were in an elevator full of Gen Z voters, what's your 30-second elevator speech?
Yep. Listen, I've been working for years alongside my Gen Z constituents and colleagues, and you guys are the absolute best of Miami and of America, and you guys are the future. And as your representative, I'm going to fight for your interests. The campaign slogan on all of our stuff is a Florida we can afford. Gen Z is going to be the front line of the affordability and cost of living crisis. When we think about a future where we can build our families, where we can have a job, have, a future that we're proud of, it starts by making sure we're taking care of Gen Z voters and constituents. And I'm going to be that representative. I'm the only one in this race who's going to be that representative to you all. So if you guys want to join this fight, you can see all the work that I've been doing for the last several years, that I've been doing throughout this campaign, and I'm going to continue doing. And reach out to me either on socials or, or if I meet you out there in the street, I'll give you my number and become part of this fight.
Period. Okay, at the end of every interview, I do like to do a little quick fire. These questions are not meant to trick you. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? What is the food that brings you back to your childhood?
Ooh. Arepas.
Really? What do you get inside them? Just plain?
Yeah, I love arepas. Yeah, well, Colombian, I like them, a little, just the plain style with, the cornmeal and the cheese. Yeah, just the way my grandma made them.
Oh, your favorite album?
Or actually the anise ones that are sweet. Yeah.
Good. Favorite album?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of one that's not going to get me in trouble. Okay. Damn by Kendrick Lamar.
Okay, I can respect that. Your favorite spot in your district?
Little older than you guys. Favorite spot in the district? It's a tie between Kennedy Park and Domino Park. In the district, a little bit of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Period. What's your dream concert?
Ooh, my dream concert. It's also a good one. You know what? I also still have not seen Kendrick Lamar live, so I'm gonna go with him again. I'm aging myself here, but
No, it's okay. That's like a dream concert. Oh my goodness. Hello? Ugh, I would love to.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I wish. Your best way to spend a rainy day?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, curled up watching a movie with the windows open so you can hear and see all the rain coming.
Yeah,
With a blanket and my cats and my dog on. Yeah, exactly. Curled up with my cats and my dog. Yeah.
Bonus one, what movie?
Ooh, what movie? I have to get back to you on that one.
It's okay. I also
to think
cannot
of a movie
decide.
right now.
And lastly, what's your favorite thing about Florida?
Oh, the Biscayne Bay here. I mean, any movie you watch, any pan over with a commercial, they always do that shot over Biscayne Bay, and it's what every tourist sees in a commercial, and there's a reason for it. I like just being able to go on their bay and go kayaking, and just like the smell of the water and the ocean. I mean, it's what makes Florida Florida. So
Definitely. And you know what? And with that was great. Thank you so much for appearing. It was so nice to finally talk to you. I wish you the best of luck in the primaries. Is there any way, if a viewer wants to contact you, where should they go? What's the best way?
If you go to my website, jmr.vote, you'll see my email at the very bottom there. That's my personal email. Send that out to me. And if you just have something you want to send to me, if you want to have a conversation, shoot me an email there. I'll send you my number and we'll have a conversation as well if you want to talk. And of course, you'll see me out there walking throughout the neighborhood for, the rest of this campaign and even after.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. It was so good talking to you.
Likewise, it was great chatting with you as well.